Why do our interactions with strangers so often go wrong? What if the tools we use to understand people are actually obstacles? Talking to strangers. Summary of key ideas. Introduction. We live in a connected world, yet our ability to understand people we don't know is surprisingly poor. Malcolm Gladwell explores this problem in his book, Talking to Strangers. Gladwell is a well-known journalist for The New Yorker and has written several best-selling books. He is known for making complex ideas easy to grasp. This Talking to Strangers summary explores Gladwell's main argument. Our strategies for dealing with strangers are deeply flawed. We trust people too easily. We misread their emotions. We fail to see how much context shapes behavior. This book challenges our basic assumptions about trust and deception. It forces us to rethink how we judge the people we meet. It's essential reading for anyone who wants to navigate the modern world with greater awareness. Who this book is for. This summary is for anyone who wants to understand the complexities of human interaction. It is especially relevant for leaders and managers, those who make quick judgments about people in hiring or negotiations. Students of psychology, anyone interested in human behavior, deception, and social interaction. True crime enthusiasts, readers fascinated by cases like Amanda Knox and Sandra Bland. Anyone seeking better communication. If you've ever felt misunderstood or misjudged someone, this book explains why. This book does not give you a magic formula for reading people. Instead, it explains why that's an impossible task. It offers a more thoughtful way to approach the unknown. About Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell is a Canadian journalist, author, and speaker. He has been a staff writer for The New Yorker since 1996. He has written several influential books, including The Tipping Point, Blink, and Outliers. His work explores social science research and its real-world impact. His ability to turn complex research into compelling stories has made him one of the most important public thinkers of our time. Story Shot 1. We default to truth. To function in society, we must trust each other. We can't stop to verify every piece of information we receive. Gladwell explains that our minds use a shortcut called the truth default theory. We operate under the assumption that people are honest. This isn't a conscious choice. It's a basic mechanism that enables social interaction. But it also leaves us vulnerable. Consider Bernie Madoff. He ran the largest Ponzi scheme in history. He fooled sophisticated investors for years. These were not foolish people. They defaulted to believing him because the alternative was too extraordinary to accept without strong evidence. Defaulting to truth is not a flaw. It's a feature of human society that allows for cooperation. But this same mechanism makes us vulnerable to those who deceive. Story Shot 2. The Transparency Illusion. We believe that a person's inner feelings show through their body language and facial expressions. We assume what we see on the outside reflects what's happening inside. Gladwell calls this the transparency illusion. He argues that human beings are not transparent. There is often a big gap between how people appear and how they actually feel. Gladwell cites studies where law enforcement officers and judges tried to detect lies. Their performance was no better than flipping a coin, yet they remained confident in their ability to spot liars. This illusion leads to serious errors. We trust liars and doubt honest people because we rely on unreliable cues. The belief in transparency gives us false confidence in our ability to understand strangers. Story Shot 3. The Danger of Mismatch. Our ability to read strangers breaks down when we meet a mismatched person. This is someone whose behavior doesn't match our expectations. An honest person might look nervous. A deceptive person might appear calm. When we encounter a mismatched person, our judgment tools fail. The case of Amanda Knox is a powerful example. After her roommate was murdered, Knox's behavior seemed bizarre to investigators. She cried one moment and did cartwheels the next. They saw her mismatched behavior as proof of guilt. In reality, she was a frightened young woman reacting to trauma in an unusual way. Her behavior didn't match the stereotype of innocence. She was wrongly convicted. Story shot 4. The context of coupling. We tend to believe that behavior reflects a person's fixed personality. We see an action and assume that's just who they are. This is related to what psychologists call the fundamental attribution error. Gladwell introduces the theory of coupling. Behaviors are often linked to specific circumstances. To understand a stranger's actions, you must understand their world. Don't look at the stranger and jump to conclusions. Look at the stranger's world. Malcolm Gladwell. Gladwell discusses the suicide of poet Sylvia Plath. For years, her death was seen as the result of her depression. But Gladwell points to a key contextual factor: the method she used. At the time, England's ovens released deadly carbon monoxide. After her death, England switched to less toxic gas. The suicide rate from oven gassing dropped sharply. Plath's suicide was not just about her depression. It was coupled with the lethal technology available to her. What do you think about the truth default theory? Have you ever trusted someone and been right or wrong? Share your story in the comments. Story shot 5. The Sandra Bland case. The case of Sandra Bland shows how a simple traffic stop can turn deadly. Bland was a young black woman. She was arrested after a heated argument with a police officer. She later died in jail. Gladwell uses her story to show how the book's concepts come together. The officer was trained to be suspicious. Bland was mismatched. Her angry behavior didn't fit the officer's idea of a compliant driver. The officer saw her as a threat. He misread her fear as aggression. She misread his intentions. The interaction went from a routine stop to a confrontation. Two strangers failed to understand each other. The case highlights the dangers of abandoning the truth default and ignoring context. Story shot 6. Spies are not easy to spot. You might think intelligence agents are experts at reading people, but even they get fooled. Gladwell examines Cuban spies who operated in the U.S. for years. The CIA and FBI failed to catch them. Why? Because even experts default to truth. They believe in the transparency illusion. One spy, Ana Montes, worked as a high-level analyst for the U.S. government. Her colleagues saw her as dedicated but eccentric. The signs that she was a spy were explained away. It was easier to believe she was odd than to accept she was a traitor. Even in high-stakes environments, the same psychological defaults affect everyone. Story shot 7. The role of alcohol. Alcohol is often seen as a social lubricant, but Gladwell argues it can be dangerous in our interactions with strangers. Alcohol creates a state of myopia. It narrows our mental focus to only the most obvious cues. When drunk, we lose the ability to process nuance and consider context. Gladwell applies this to sexual assault on college campuses. When people are drunk, their ability to communicate and read signals is severely impaired. This is not an excuse for assault. It's an explanation for how tragic misunderstandings can occur. Alcohol doesn't just lower inhibitions. It changes how we perceive the world. Story shot 8. Our tools are limited. We believe we have the tools to understand strangers. We think we can read faces and body language to gauge intent. But what if these tools are the source of our errors? Gladwell's final point is a call for humility. We must accept our limits in reading people. We must be cautious about making judgments. We must remember the powerful influence of context. The right way to talk to strangers is with caution and humility. Malcolm Gladwell. The book calls for a new approach to policing. It should be based less on suspicion and more on trust. It's a plea for all of us to be more careful in our interactions with strangers. We should ask more questions. We should be less certain of our conclusions. Talking to strangers is not a guide to becoming a lie detector. It's a warning about the limits of our knowledge. It urges us to be more patient and aware of the complexity of others. How has this summary changed your perspective on strangers? What will you do differently? Let us know in the comments. Mental models from talking to strangers. Gladwell's book offers several powerful mental models. Truth default theory. We naturally assume people are honest. This enables society to function, but it also makes us vulnerable. Recognize that your default is to trust. The transparency illusion. We mistakenly believe we can read people's inner thoughts from their appearance. What we see outside is often a poor indicator of what's happening inside. Coupling. Behavior is tightly linked to context. You can't understand an action without understanding the circumstances. Examine the stranger's world, not just the person. Mismatch. Sometimes people's behavior doesn't match our expectations. Mismatched individuals are at high risk of being misunderstood. Be aware that your stereotypes can mislead you. Implementation Guide. How can you apply these lessons to your life? Here are practical steps. 1. Acknowledge your limitations. Accept that you are not an effective lie detector. Be less confident in your ability to read strangers. This will make you more cautious. 2. Examine the stranger's world. When you see puzzling behavior, resist judging character. Ask, what is the context? What circumstances might influence their actions? Look for clues in the environment. 3. Don't assume transparency. People's faces and body language are not reliable windows into their souls. Someone nervous might be honest. Someone calm could be deceptive. Don't over-rely on these cues. 4. Increase the burden of proof. When you feel suspicious, don't act immediately. Use it as a trigger to gather more information. Seek independent verification. Don't let suspicion end the conversation. 5. Be cautious with alcohol. Alcohol impairs judgment for everyone. Be extra careful in situations where alcohol is present. It increases the risk of misunderstanding. Final summary. Talking to strangers explores why we so often fail to understand people we don't know. Malcolm Gladwell argues that our instincts are deeply flawed. We default to believing people tell the truth, even when they don't. We think we can read emotions from faces, but we can't. We ignore the powerful influence of context on behavior. Through stories about Sandra Bland and Bernie Madoff, Gladwell shows how these errors lead to disaster. The book reminds us to approach strangers with humility. It challenges us to be more thoughtful, patient, and aware of the complexity of human interaction. Related book summaries. Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. Intrigued by split-second judgments? Blink explores the power and peril of thinking without thinking. Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Want to understand how context shapes success? Outliers complements the ideas in Talking to Strangers. The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. Learn how small ideas spread like epidemics. Influence by Robert Cialdini. For a deeper dive into persuasion psychology and why we're easily manipulated, follow the Story Shots podcast for more insights on understanding human behavior and navigating complex social interactions. Download the free Story Shots app to access the complete mental models and implementation guide for talking to strangers. Get the audiobook of Talking to Strangers for free using the link in the description or the Story Shots app. Which of Gladwell's 3 theories, truth default, transparency illusion, or coupling, do you find most relevant to your daily interactions? Share your thoughts in the comments below.